Hey, I've been wanting to make this video for a while for people like myself who have been suffering from uh, chronic illness from mold illness, sensitivity to mycotoxins and mold. In my case, I've been going through it for 9 years, and I want to tell you about therapy that I didn't know. Well, I knew about it, but didn't really take it seriously till about 4 months ago, called dynamic neural retraining. Um, and let you know if you're going through this that for me, dynamic neural retraining has alleviated my symptoms, I would say easily 90+%. The range of symptoms that I have experienced over the last 9 years, all dramatically reduced. The severity of symptoms, dramatically reduced. The frequency of symptoms, dramatically reduced. The duration, when I do start to feel, again, mild, infrequent, um, and I start with this therapeutic training, um, this new treatment, DNRS, the duration of the symptom gone almost always within, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes. So this has really been transformative for me, because if you're going through chronic illness for a long time, you have come to expect that this is something that's going to be with you for the rest of your life, and it's very frustrating and depressing. So I'm just excited about it, and like I say, I didn't know about it, and when I find, let me also mention that this is a therapy which is useful for a variety of sorts of chronic illness, including people suffering from Lyme disease, fibromyalgia. It seems like a range of illnesses that are kind of sprawling in symptoms, a little hard to pin down. Um, right, there's a variety of these, and sometimes people experience more than one at the same time, and that's actually not surprising once you learn more about what's going on with DNRS. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Now, my purpose is not to take you through the ins and outs of dynamic neural retraining. There are other resources for that, but just to let you know a little bit about it, so you can assess whether it's something to pursue in your own case. Um, let me also say that if you are living with a current known outbreak of a seriously toxic mold like Stachybotrys, toxic black mold, if you know that you have that at work or in your house, this is not, what I'm talking about is not a substitute for getting away from that. That is serious business. That really is toxic. So this is not meant to be any sort of substitute for that. This is, again, over a longer term, this kind of sprawling sorts of symptoms, what I would describe as having become hypersensitive to lots of different places that weren't making you sick before now will make you sick. And for me, that was one of the biggest puzzles of starting into this chronic illness was, okay, fine, I got sick at work because there was a Stachybotrys outbreak. Why am I sick? Why am I hypersensitive now in a way that I never was before? And I never was able to get an adequate answer from doctors about that. The most recent doctor that I saw trying to approach this by way of seeing whether I had some kind of growth, mold or fungal growth in my sinuses, an ENT who's a well-known mold specialist, but works on primarily ENT, sinuses and stuff. When I asked him this question, did he see any prospect of me getting 100% behind this? And he basically said, no, not unless you can change your DNA. Well, to me, that's not an answer, because I was being made sick in places that I wasn't made sick before 9 years ago, and my DNA didn't change. So I just never got an adequate answer to that. But now I feel that I do with dynamic neural training. Again, I'll tell you more about that in just a second. Now, the standard approach, at least for me in my experience over the last several years, number one, avoidance, and number two, detox in various forms. So binders, cholestyramine, charcoal, glutathione. I would do saunas. I mean, I tried lots of different things: herbal, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbs, and so forth. Avoidance was my main idea, although that didn't seem to work out so well because I was getting sick. It was very mysterious why I would get sick and when, why the symptoms shifted. Sometimes I would get sick when I felt like I really hadn't been anyplace new. So that was all extremely frustrating, obviously. Now, turning to dynamic neural retraining, there are two main things that I want you to understand in terms of approaching dynamic neural retraining. The first is that it's a different diagnosis. It is thinking about where your symptoms are coming from, not in terms of exposure to toxins in your environment. It's not your body's reaction to toxins that explains your symptoms. Your symptoms instead, as understood through the framework of dynamic neural retraining, come from they're neurological in origin. Not psychological, I'll return to that in a second, but neurological. That is a part of your brain, in particular the limbic system. Now, your neurology is complicated, but the root of the explanation is the limbic system, which is old animal part of your brain. It's at the top of your spinal column, and is sort of a pre-conscious hub, right? Managing all parts of your. I mean, there's so many things that you do in life that are both learned, but also become pre-conscious responses to your environment. All right. And the idea is that the limbic system has gotten a shock to the system from that initial trauma of mold exposure and is behaving like a wounded animal that is now barking at anything that might be a perceived threat. But again, it's kind of a dumb animal brain, so like a wounded animal, it's gotten a bit paranoid. Maybe at least that's how I think about it. And so it's sending out false alarms, which helps to explain why the pattern is really not a pattern, because it's not, in fact, a response to the environment. It's coming from in here, not out there. And so dynamic neural retraining is a matter of calming down that response, calming down that pre-conscious response, okay? So point number one is neurological in origin rather than environmental in origin. Point number two to understand is it takes advantage of what's known as neuroplasticity. And if you don't know about neuroplasticity, I encourage you to look into it because it's really fascinating in its own right. I happen to know about it before, which is one of the things that opened me up to this as a possible treatment. So neuroplasticity basically is the idea that the brain is not divided into discrete mechanisms that if one part is broken, you simply lose function, but that the brain itself is plastic and can be, in effect, rewired. And this is being used in all sorts of therapies, innovative therapies, as this is a pretty new stuff in neuroscience for stroke victims and people with phantom limb syndrome and things like this. So this is applying the principle of neuroplasticity to heal and change that response of your limbic system to the environment. Okay, so it's not, just to be clear, this is not a version of, as you may have heard from a doctor, I certainly did at one point, that this was in my head, that this was a psychological, and it advised me to go get some therapy, some counseling. It's not a matter of insight, right? Having the insight that this is limbic. It's a matter of, although that is part of it, but that's not the fundamental part as I understand it. The fundamental part is a retraining. It's a daily regimen that you will commit to for an hour a day. It doesn't have to be an hour solid. I don't do it an hour solid. Over the course of 6 months is what you're told to sign up for. I will say that almost everyone that I have seen, in terms of recovery videos and my own experience, has experienced a rapid, within just a few days, 2 or 3 days, a rapid and noticeable improvement very soon. So a rapid improvement, but then settling in, and that will help, I think, convince you that this is on the right track if it does in fact work for you. But then it's a daily regimen, a discipline really, that will carry you over the course of many weeks and months. Now that may seem like a big commitment, but if you're like me, over the course of 9 years, how much time, first of all, have you already spent researching, trying to address your illness? How much time do you spend when you are sick, just unproductive and wasted because you're sick? I would have many what I would think of as just black hole days where the mold, as I would think about it at the time, would come over me, and a day, 2 days, 3 days, I would just be unproductive. My brain wasn't really functioning. Since day one that I've started this 4 months ago, I have not had one black hole day, not a single one since the first day that I started this. All right. So, right there, to me, the proof is in the pudding. This was the problem with me, I think, going back several years. So, in fact, not mold illness, not chronic illness, something else, and fixable. So, anyway, I'll put some links below for you to look into this yourself, and I hope this helps some of you guys. All right, take care. Bye-bye.